kasalukuyan ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas. Kayang mag-ibig sa sinaghanan, alam ng puso sa tingin mo'y buhay. Lupang inihang tulad ka ng mag-ibig sa magtutupin. Kita pasisipin sa nagtataputong sa simula sa langit ko walang kahinatang tulad ang isang pagkayang minamahal. Ang isang lang magawal ko'y tagumpay na nag-iiging. Ang ituwid na parang lang kailan ay mag-iiging. Lumalang araw ka, waragin magsinta, buhay langit sa akin mo. Ang bigaya na pangay marami, ang malagay ng nais sa'yo. Simula ko hanggang ngayon, isa ang naging layon. Magkaisa ang magulo, kaibigan ay marunong. Malayo mula sa unang daga, hiyang sa panganib na umarlang. Pinagako sa puso at paniniwala, ang limang para sa kawalan. Basta mo'y tagumpay, bumalabawis suwat buhay. Kapayapaan, katarungan, ay ang pinanglalaban. Alhamdulillah, magparay sa mundo. Ang sabong na ikang mamahalin, walang pipigil sa damdamin, mga pangako'y tutuparin. Habang buhay kami sa'yo'y magbabantay, mananatili sa puso't isipan. Ang lahat ay nanabuhis ng buhay, nasa piling na ang may kapal. Ang sando'y tagumpay, bumalabawis suwat buhay. Kapayapaan, katarungan, ay ang pinanglalaban. Alhamdulillah, magparay sa mundo. Ang buhay ng station team balita at ibabahan ay tumatalakay sa may subang kasalukuyan at nakapanahon. Makapolitika, makatingnan, makakomentaryo at balita, ang programa ito'y patas sa lahat. Walang pinigilingan, walang tinatampihan, at walang tinapamigan ang programa ito. Ang programa ito ay public service sa kakaminan at trabaho lamang.
Okay, time check muna tayo sa umagang ito mga suki sa ating programa, no? Okay, bago natin parinig itong recorded video mga suki, no? Okay, Obama on A1. Ibig sabihin po artificial intelligence, free speech, and the future. So, ulitin ko po mga kababayan sa umagang ito. Okay, isang magaling na communicator mga suki, no? Okay, si former President Barack Obama. Okay, malalim na kasi ang laro po sa kasalukuyan, no? So, malalim na masyado. Hindi na natin alam po ang kung ano na itong mga suki, mga kababayan, no? O kailangan po ay sabayan natin pumugitan po ng mga technology. Ayan po mga suki, no? Malalim ng laro. Okay. Matalino na po ang tao sa buong daigdig mga suki, no? Okay, so hindi na ito basta-basta, no? Ayan. Okay, dito tayo sa Consolidated News natin, ADLSNTV Corporation. Okay. Sa programa po Halo-Halo Special Opinion Balita at iba pa, no? Karamay po sa serbisyo publiko tinig ng mamamayan, and then sumbungan ng mamamayan mga suki, no? Okay. And then basahin ko muna ito anong sinabi ito. Okay, welcome to live chat. Remember to guard your privacy and abide by our community guidelines, no? Okay, Abs Tamahan and live stream News TV, ADLSNTV OPC Corporation mga suki, no? Ayan. So, pakinggan natin po ang dating presidente po, okay, ng US, itong si Obama. Former President Barack Obama on artificial intelligence, free speech, and the future mga kababayan, na? Okay, so bago ko magbasa ng mga national news, pero mahaba ito, sigurado mahaba ito, no? Okay lang. Mga suki, no? Okay, sa pamagitan po ng information mga suki, no? Ayan. Okay, kung meron pang Obama sa US, gusto ko pa rin na sila po ay bumalik sa White House, no? Okay. Kung meron pang Obama uli, gusto ko pa rin umakyat sa White House, no? Ayan. Okay, sa kanyang pamalakad, no? O, pakinggan natin ito. Ay tumulong kayo mag-analyze po mga suki, no? Okay. Ayan.
Hey, how are you? Very nice to meet you. Looks like you're putting out my whole office. Yeah, we are. Man, I mean, you can somewhere. How you been? All right. How are you? I'm doing great. I should have told you, by the way, you didn't have to wear a tie, but you look sharp. You know more about this stuff than I do, so. Well, that's terrible.
President Barack Obama, the 44th President of the United States. We're here at the Obama Foundation. Welcome to Decoder.
It is great to be here. Thank you for having me.
I am really excited to talk to you. There's a lot to talk about. We are here on the occasion of President Biden signing executive order about AI. I would describe this order as sweeping. I think it's over 100 pages long. There's a lot of ideas in it. Everything from regulating biosynthesis with AI. There's some safety regulations in there. It mandates something called red teaming, transparency, watermarking. These feel like new challenges, like very new challenges for the government's relationship with technology. I want to start with a decoder question. What is your framework for thinking about these challenges and how you evaluate them?
This is something that I've been interested in for a while. So back in 2015.
Good morning, Mr. President. Barack Obama from the Philippines.
The landscape transformed by social media and the information revolution impacting every aspect of our lives. I started getting in conversations about artificial intelligence and this next phase, this next wave that might be coming. And I think one of the lessons that we got from the transformation of our media landscape was that incredible innovation, incredible promise, incredible good can come out of it. but there are a bunch of unintended consequences, and that we have to be maybe a little more intentional about how our democracies interact with what is primarily being generated out of the private sector, and what rules of the road are we setting up, and how can we make sure that we maximize the good and maybe minimize some of the bad. And so I commissioned my science guy, John Holdren, along with John Podesta, who had been a former chief of staff and worked on climate change issues. Let's pull together some experts to figure this out. And we issued a big report in my last year. The interesting thing, even then, was people felt enormously promising technology, but we may be overhyping how quick it's going to come. And as we've seen just in the last year or two, even those who are developing these large language models, who are in the weeds with these programs, are starting to realize this thing is moving faster and is potentially even more powerful than we originally imagined. Now, so my framework, and in conversations with government officials, private sector, academics, the framework I emerged from is that this is going to be a transformative technology. It's already, in all kinds of small ways, but very broadly, changing the shape of our economy. In some ways, even our search engines, basic stuff that we take for granted is already operating under some AI principles, but this is going to be turbocharged. It's going to impact how we make stuff, how we deliver services, how we get information, and the potential for us to have.
Okay, itong Pangulo ito, Sabi technology, Sabi tech, tech sabi, ano ba yung tama? Sabi tech o tech sabi? President po ng United States of America, no? Magaling sa internet. Parang dito rin sa Pilipinas. Okay, dalawang presidente magkasunod. Okay, itong si President Pinoy, Benigno Aquino Jr. ay sabi rin, no? Tech sabi. Tama ba yung pronunciation ko, sabi o sabi? Sabi ata, no? And then itong si Marcos Jr. ay magaling din po sa technology, no? Okay, magaling sa technology. Yan po ang tinatawag po President tech sabi, mga suki, mga bayan, no? Okay, i-continue lang natin.
Enormous medical breakthroughs, the potential for us to be able to provide individualized tutoring for kids in remote areas, the potential for us to solve some of our energy challenges and deal with greenhouse gases, that this could unlock amazing innovation, but that it can also do some harm. We can end up with powerful AI models in the hands of somebody in the basement who develops a new smallpox variant, or non-state actors who suddenly, because of a powerful AI tool, can hack into critical infrastructure, or maybe less dramatically, AI, infiltrating the lives of our children in ways that we didn't intend. In some cases, the way social media has. So what that means then is that I think the government, as an expression of our democracy, needs to be aware of what's going on. Those who are developing these frontier systems need to be transparent. I don't believe that we should try to put the genie back in the bottle and be anti-tech because of all the enormous potential. But I think we should put some guardrails around some risks that we can anticipate and have enough flexibility that it doesn't destroy innovation, but also is guiding and steering this technology in a way that maximizes not just individual company profits, but also the public good.
So let me make the comparison for you. I would say that the problem in tech regulation for the past 15 years has been social media. How do we regulate social media? How do we get more good stuff, less bad stuff, make sure the really bad stuff is illegal? You came to the presidency on the back of social media, and
I was the first digital president.
you had a BlackBerry. I remember people were very excited about your BlackBerry. I wrote a story about your iPad. That was transformative. That's young people are going to take to the political environment. They're going to use these tools. We're going to change America with
You
it.
can make an argument I wouldn't have been elected had it not been for social networks.
Now we're on the other side of that. There was another guy who got elected on the back of social networks. There was another movement in America that has been very negative on the back of that election.
Right.
We have basically failed to regulate social networks, I'd say. There's no comprehensive privacy bill even.
Right.
There was already a framework for regulating media in this country.
Mm-hmm.
We could apply a lot of what we knew about should we have good media to social networks.
Right.
There are some First Amendment questions in there,
Right.
what have you, important ones, but there was an existing framework.
Right.
With AI, it's we're going to tell computers to do stuff, and they're going to go do it.
Right. We hope.
That we have no framework for that.
We hope they do what
We hope, right?
think we're telling them to do.
We also ask computers a question, and they might just confidently lie to us or help us
Yes.
lie at scale. There's no framework for
Right.
that. What do you think you can pull from the sort of failure to regulate social media into this new environment such that we get it right this time?
Well, this is
Do anything at all?
Well, this is part of the reason why I think what the Biden administration did today in putting out the EO, the work they've done is so important. Not because it's the end point, but because it's really the beginning of building out a framework. And when you mentioned how this executive order has a bunch of different stuff in it, what that reflects is we don't know all the problems that are going to arise out of this. We don't know all the promising potential of AI, but we're starting to put together sort of the foundations for what we hope will be a smart framework for dealing with it. And in some cases, what AI is going to do is to accelerate advances in, let's say, medicine. We've already seen, for example, with things like protein folding and the breakthroughs that can take place that would not have happened had it not been for some of these AI tools. And we want to make sure that that's done safely. We want to make sure that it's done responsibly. And it may be that we already have some laws in place that can manage that. There may be some novel developments in AI where an existing agency, an existing law just doesn't work. If we're dealing with the alignment problem and we want to make sure that some of these large language models, where even the developers aren't entirely confident about what these models are doing, what the computer is thinking or doing, well, in that case, we're going to have to figure out what are the red teaming, what are the testing regimens. And in talking to the companies themselves, they will acknowledge that their safety protocols and their testing regimens, et cetera, may not be where they need to be yet. And I think it's entirely appropriate then for us to plant a flag and say, all right, frontier companies, you need to disclose what your safety protocols are to make sure that we don't have rogue programs going off and hacking into in our financial system, for example. Tell us what tests you're using. Make sure that we have some independent verification that right now this stuff is working. But that framework can't be a fixed framework because these models are developing so quickly that oversight and any regulatory framework is going to have to be flexible, and it's going to have to be nimble, and by the way, it's also going to require some really smart people who understand how these programs and these models are working, not just in the companies themselves, but also in the nonprofit sector and in government, which is why I was glad to see that the Biden administration, part of the executive order, is specifically calling on a bunch of, hotshot young people who are interested in AI to do a stint outside of the companies themselves and go work for government for a while. Go work with some of the research institutes that are popping up in places like the Harvard Lab or the Stanford AI Center, and some other nonprofits, because we're going to need to make sure that everybody can have confidence that whatever journey we're on here with AI, that it's not just being driven by a few people, without any kind of interaction or voice from ordinary folks, regular people who are going to be using these products and impacted by these products.
There's ordinary folks and there's the people who are building it who need to go help write regulations. Right. And there's a split there. The conventional wisdom in the Valley for years is the government is too slow, it doesn't understand technology, and by the time it actually writes a functional rule, the technology it was aiming to regulate will be obsolete. This is markedly different, right? The AI doomers are the ones asking for regulation the most. The big companies have asked for regulation. Sam Altman has toured the capitals of the world politely asking to be regulated. Why do you think there's such a fervor for that regulation? Is it just incumbents wanting to cement their position?
Well, look, you're raising an important point, which is, and rightly, there's some suspicion, I think, among some people that, these companies want regulation because they want to lock out competition. And as you know, historically, sort of a central principle of tech culture has been open source. We want everything out there. Everybody's able to play with models and applications and create new products, and that's how innovation happens. Here, regulation starts looking like, well, maybe we start having closed systems, and the big frontier companies, the Microsofts, the Googles, the OpenAIs, Anthropics, that they're going to somehow lock us out. But in my conversations with the tech leaders on this, I think there is, for the first time, some genuine humility, because they are seeing the power that these models may have. I talked to one executive, and look, there's no shortage of hyperbole in the tech world, right? Like, this is a pretty sober guy, like an adult who's
now I have to guess
who's seen a bunch of these cycles and been through boom and bust, and I asked him, I said, well, when you say this technology you think is going to be transformative, give me sort of some analogy. He said, I sat with my team and we talked about it. And after going around and around, what we decided was maybe the best analogy was electricity. And I thought, well, electricity, that was a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, I think what they recognize is that it's in their own commercial self-interest that there's not some big screw up on this. That if in fact it is as transformative as they expect it to be, then having some rules, some protections that create a competitive field, allow everybody to participate, come up with new products, compete on price, compete on functionality, but that none of us are taking such big risks.
Yeah, there's a view
that the whole thing blows up in our faces. I do think that there is sincere concern that if we just have an unfettered race to the bottom, that this could end up choking off the goose that might be laying a bunch of golden eggs.
There is the view in the Valley, though, that any constraint on technology is bad.
Yeah,
any caution, any principle where you might slow down is the enemy of progress, and the net good is better if we just race that as fast as possible.
In fairness, that's not just in the Valley. That's in every business I know. It's not like Wall Street loves regulation. It's not as if manufacturers are really keen for government to micromanage how they produce goods. But one of the things that we've learned, through the industrial age and the information age, over the last century, is that you can over-regulate, you can have over-bureaucratized things,
but that if you have smart regulations that set some basic goals and standards, making sure you're not creating products that are unsafe to consumers, making sure that if you're, selling food, people who go in the grocery store can trust that they're not going to die from salmonella or E. coli, making sure that if somebody buys a car, that, the brakes work, making sure that, if I take my electric whatever and I plug it into a socket anywhere, any place in the country, that it's not going to shock me and blow up in my face. It turns out all those various rules, standards actually create marketplaces and are good for business. And innovation then develops around those rules. So it's not an argument that I think part of what happens in the tech community is the sense that we're smarter than everybody else. And these people slowing us down are impeding rapid progress. And when you look at the history of innovation, it turns out that having some smart guideposts around which innovation takes place not only doesn't slow things down, in some cases, it actually raises standards and accelerates progress. There were a bunch of folks who said, look, you're going to kill the automobile if you put airbags in there. Well, it turns out actually people figured out, we can actually put airbags in there and make them safer, and over time, the costs go down.
There's a great TikTok of somebody reacting to drunk driving laws in the 80s. It's great. I'll send it to you. There's a really difficult part in the CEO about provenance.
Yeah.
Watermarking content, right. Making sure people can see it's AI generated. You are among the most deep faked
absolutely
people in the world.
Well, because what I realized is when I left office, I'd probably been filmed and recorded more than any human in history, just because I happened to be the first president when the smartphone came out.
I'm assuming you have some very deep personal feelings about being deep faked in this way. There's a big First Amendment issue here, right? I can use Photoshop one way and the government doesn't say I have to put a label on it.
Right.
I use it a slightly different way. The government's going to show up and tell Adobe, you've got to put a label on this.
Right.
How do you square that circle?
Well,
it seems very challenging.
I think this is going to be an iterative process. I don't think you're going to be able to create a blanket rule. But the truth is that's been how our governance of information, media, speech, that's how it's developed for a couple hundred years now. And with each new technology, we have to adapt and figure out some new rules of the road. So let's take my example, a deep fake of me that is used for political satire or just to, somebody doesn't like me and they want to deep fake me. I was the president of the United States, and there are some pretty formidable rules that have been set up to protect people from making fun of public figures. I'm a public figure, and what you are doing to me as a public figure is different than what you do to a 13-year-old girl in high school, freshman in high school. And so we're going to treat that differently. And that's okay. We should have different rules for public figures than we do for private citizens. We should have different rules for what is clearly sort of political commentary and satire versus cyberbullying. Or
where do you think those rules land? Do they land on individuals? Do they land on the people making the tools like Adobe or Google? Do they land on the distribution networks like Facebook?
My suspicion is how responsibility is allocated, we're going to have to sort out. I think that, but I think the key thing to understand is, and look, I taught constitutional law. I'm close to a First Amendment absolutist in the sense that I generally don't believe that even offensive speech, mean speech, etc., it should be certainly not regulated by the government. And I'm even game to argue that on social media platforms, etc., that the default position should be free speech rather than censorship. I agree with all that. But keep in mind, we've never had completely free speech, right? We have laws against child pornography. We have laws against, human trafficking. We have laws against certain kinds of speech that we deem to be really harmful to the public health and welfare. And the courts, when they evaluate that, they say, they come up with a whole bunch of time, place, manner restrictions that may be acceptable in some cases, aren't acceptable in others. You get a bunch of case law that develops. There's arguments about it in the public square. We may disagree. Should Nazis be able to protest in Skokie? Well, that's a tough one, but we can figure this out. And that, I think, is how this is going to develop. I do believe that the platforms themselves are more than just common carriers like the phone company. They're not passive. There's always some content moderation taking place. And so, once that line has been crossed, it's perfectly reasonable for the broader society to say, well, we don't want to just leave that entirely to a private company. I think we need to at least know how you're making those decisions, what things you might.
Okay, sandali lang, i-break ko muna. I-pause ko muna sandali, no? Pause muna. Okay. Ayan. Sandali lang.
Ang buong administration pinagbalita at ay tumatalakay sa naisipang kasalukuyan at nakapanahon. Makapolitika, makaopinyon, makakomentaryo at balita ang programa ay patas sa lahat. Walang kinikilingan, walang pinakampisan, at walang pinapamigan ang programa ito. Ang programa ito ay public service sa kakaminan at trabaho lamang.
Okay, continue lang natin. Sandali lang, no?
Amplifying through your algorithm and what things you aren't. And, it may be that what you're doing isn't illegal, but we should at least be able to know how some of these decisions are made. I think it's going to be that kind of process that takes place. What I don't agree with is the large tech platforms suggesting somehow that we want to be treated entirely as a common carrier, and
That's the Clarence Thomas view, right?
yeah, but on the other hand, we know you're selling advertising based on the idea that you're making a bunch of decisions about your
Well,
products.
this is very challenging, right?
Yeah.
If you say you're a common carrier, then you are in fact regulating them. You're saying you can't make any decisions.
Yes.
You say you are exercising editorial control. They are protected by the First Amendment.
Yes.
And then regulations get very, very difficult.
Right.
It feels like even with AI, when we talk about content generation with AI or with social networks, we run right into the First Amendment over and over again. And most of our approaches, this is what I worry about, is we try to get around it so we can make some speech regulations without saying we're going to make some speech regulations. Copyright law is the most effective speech regulation on the internet because everyone will agree, okay, Disney owns that, bring it down.
Well, because there's property involved.
Well,
Right?
there's
money involved.
There's money. Maybe less property than money, but there's definitely money.
IP and hence money. Yeah. Well, look, here's my general view.
Yeah. But do you worry that we're making fake speech regulations? We're not actually talking about the balance of equities that you're describing here?
I think that we need to have, and AI, I think, is going to force this, that we need to have a much more robust public conversation around these rules and agree to some broad principles to guide us. And the problem is right now, let's face it, it's gotten so caught up in partisanship, partly because of the last election, partly because of COVID and vax and anti-vax proponents, that we've lost sight of our ability to just come up with some principles that don't advantage one party or another or one position or another, but do reflect our broad adherence to democracy. But the point I guess I'm emphasizing here is this is not the first time we've had to do this. We had to do this when radio emerged. We had to do this when television emerged. And it was easier to do back then, in part because you had 3 or 5 companies, or the public through the government technically owned the airwaves, and so you could make these.
No, this is the square on a bingo card. If I could get to the red lion case with you, I've won. Right? There was a framework here. So the government owns the airwaves. It's going to allocate them to people in some way, and we can make some decisions, and that is an effective and appropriate situation.
That was the hook.
Can we bring that to the internet?
I think you have to find a different kind of hook.
Sure.
But ultimately, even though the idea that the public and the government own the airwaves, that was really just another way of saying this affects everybody. And so we should all have a say in how this operates. And we believe in capitalism, and we don't mind you making a bunch of money through the innovation and the products that you're creating and the content that you're putting out there. But we want to have some say in what our kids are watching or how things are being advertised, etc.
If you were the president now, and I was with my family last night, and the idea that the Chinese TikTok teaches kids to be scientists and doctors, and our TikTok, the algorithm is different, and we should have a regulation like China has that teaches our kids to do that. It came up, and all the parents around the table said, yeah, we're super into that. We should do that. How would you write a rule like that? Is it even possible with our First Amendment?
Well, look, for a long time, let's say under television, there were requirements around children's television. It kept on getting watered down to the point where anything qualified as children's television, right? We had a fairness doctrine that made sure that there was some balance in terms of how views were presented. And I'm not arguing, good or bad in either of those things. I'm simply making the point that we've done it before. And there was no sense that somehow that was anti-democratic or it was that squashing innovation. It was just an understanding that we live in a democracy. And so we kind of set up rules so that we think the democracy works as better rather than worse. And everybody has some say in it. The idea behind the First Amendment is we're going to have a marketplace of ideas, that these ideas battle themselves out. And ultimately, we can all judge better ideas versus worse ideas. And I deeply believe in that core principle. We are going to have to adapt to the fact that now there is so much content, there are so few regulators, everybody's can throw up any idea out there, even if it's sexist, racist, violent, etc. And that makes it a little bit harder than it did when we only had 3 TV stations or a handful of radio stations or what have you. But the principle still applies, which is how do we create a deliberative process where the average citizen can hear a bunch of different viewpoints and then say, you know what, here's what I agree with, here's what I don't agree with, and hopefully through that process we get better outcomes.
When we crash the 2 themes of our conversation together, AI and the social platforms, Meta just had earnings. Mark Zuckerberg was on the earnings call, and he said, for our feed apps, Instagram, Facebook, Threads, for the feed apps, I think that over time, more of the content that people consume is either going to be generated or edited by AI.
Mm-hmm.
So he envisions a world in which social networks are showing people perhaps exactly what they want to see.
Absolutely.
Inside of their preferences,
right.
Much like advertising that keeps them engaged. Should we regulate that away? Should we tell them to stop? Should we embrace this as a way to show people more content that they're willing to see that might expand their worldview?
This is something I've been wrestling with for a while. I gave a speech about misinformation in our information silos at Stanford last year. I am concerned about business models that just feed people exactly what they already believe and agree with, and all designed to sell them stuff. Do I think that's great for democracy? No. Do I think that that's something that the government itself can regulate? I'm skeptical that you can come up with perfect regulations there. What I actually think probably needs to happen, though, is that we need to think about different platforms and different models, different business models, so that it may be that I'm perfectly happy to have AI mediate how I buy jeans online, right? That could be very efficient. I'm perfectly happy with it. If you know, and so if it's a shopping app or a thread, fine. When we're talking about political discourse, when we're talking about culture, et cetera, can we create other places for people to go that broaden their perspective, make them curious about how other people are seeing the world, where they actually learn something as opposed to just reinforce their existing biases. But I don't think that's something that government is going to be able to sort of legislate. I think that's something that consumers and interacting with companies are going to have to discover and find alternatives. The interesting thing, look, I'm not obviously 12 years old. I didn't grow up, with my thumbs on these screens. So I'm an old ass, 62-year-old guy who sometimes can't really work all the apps on my phone. But I do have two daughters who are in their 20s, and it's interesting the degree to which, at a certain point, they have found almost every app, social media app, thread, getting kind of boring after a while. It gets old, precisely because all it's doing is telling what you already know or what the program thinks you want to know or what you want to see. So you're not surprised anymore. You're not discovering anything anymore. You're not learning anymore. And so I think there's a promise to how we can. There's a market. Let's put it that way. I think there's a market for products that don't just do that. Mm-hmm. It's the same reason why, people have asked me around AI, are there going to still be artists around and singers and actors, or is it all going to be computer generated stuff? And my answer is, for elevator music, AI is going to work fine. For
a bunch of elevator musicians just freaked out, dude.
For the average, even legal brief, or let's say a research memo in a law firm, AI can probably do as good a job as a second-year law associate.
Certainly as good a job as I did.
Exactly. But, Bob Dylan or Stevie Wonder,
there's one thing.
That is different. And the reason is because part of the human experience, part of the human genius is it's almost a mutation. It's not predictable. It's messy. It's new. It's different. It's rough. It's weird. That is the stuff that ultimately taps into something deeper in us. And I think there's going to be a market for that.
So you, in addition to being the former president, you are a best-selling author. You have a production company with your wife. You're in the IP business, which is why you think it's property. It's good. I appreciate that. The thing that will stop AI in its tracks in this moment is copyright lawsuits, right? You ask a generative AI model to spit out Barack Obama's speech, and it will do it to some level of passability. Yeah. Probably C+. That's my estimation. C+.
It'd be one of my worst speeches, but it might sound.
You fire a cannon of C+ content in any business model on the internet, you upend it. Yeah. But there are a lot of authors, musicians now, artists suing the companies saying this is not fair use to train on our data, to just ingest all of it. Where do you stand on that? Do you think that, as an author, do you think it's appropriate for them to ingest this much content?
Set me aside for a second, because Michelle and I, we've already sold a lot of books and we're doing fine. So I'm not overly stressed about it personally. But what I do think President Biden's executive order speaks to, but there's a lot more work that has to be done on this, and copyright is just one element of this. If AI turns out to be as pervasive and as powerful as its proponents expect, and I have to say, the more I look into it, I think it is going to be that disruptive. We are going to have to think about not just intellectual property, we're going to have to think about jobs and the economy differently. And not all these problems are going to be solved inside of industry. So what do I mean by that? I think with respect to copyright law, you will see people with legitimate claims financing lawsuits and litigation, and through the courts and various other regulatory mechanisms, people who are creating content, they're going to figure out ways to get paid and to protect the stuff they create. And it may impede the development of large language models for a while, but over the long term, I don't think that'll just be a speed bump. The broader question is going to be what happens when 10% of existing jobs now definitively can be done better by some large language model or other variant of AI. And are we going to have to re-examine how we educate our kids and what jobs are going to be available? And the truth of the matter is that during my presidency, there was I think a little bit of naivete where people would say, the answer to lifting people out of poverty and making sure they have high enough wages is we're going to retrain them and we're going to educate them, and they should all become coders because that's the future. Well, if AI is coding better than all but the very best coders, if ChatGPT can generate a research memo better than the third, fourth year associate, maybe not the partner, who's got a particular expertise or judgment, now what are you telling young people coming up? And I think we're going to have to start having conversations about how do we pay those jobs that can't be done by AI? How do we pay those better? Healthcare, nursing, teaching, childcare, art, things that are really important to our lives, but maybe commercially, historically, have not paid as well. Are we going to have to think about the length of the work week and how we share jobs? Are we going to have to think about the fact that more people choose to operate like independent contractors, but where are they getting their healthcare from, and where are they getting their retirement from, right? Those are the kinds of conversations that I think we're going to have to start having to deal with, and that's why I'm glad that the President Biden's EO begins that conversation. Again, I can't emphasize enough, because I think you'll see some people saying, well, we still don't have tough regulations. Where's the teeth in this? We're not forcing these big companies to do X, Y, Z as quickly as we should. That I think this administration understands, and I've certainly emphasized in conversations with them, this is just the start. And this is going to unfold over the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And by the way, it's going to be unfolding internationally. There's going to be a conference this week in England around international safety standards on AI. Vice President President Harris is going to be attending. I think that's a good thing, because part of the challenge here is we're going to have some cross-border frameworks and regulations and standards and norms that's part of what makes this different and harder to manage than the advent of radio and television, because the internet, by definition, is a worldwide phenomenon.
Yeah. You said you were the first digital president. I gotta ask, have you used these tools? Have you had the aha moment where the computer is talking to you? Have you generated a picture of yourself?
I have used some of these tools during the course of these conversations and this research, and it's
Has
fun.
Bing flirted with you yet? It flirts with everybody, I hear.
Bing didn't flirt with me, but the way they're designed, and I've actually raised this with some of the designers. In some cases they're designed to anthropomorphize, to make it feel like you are talking to a human, right? It's like, can we pass the Turing test, right? That's a specific objective because it makes it seem more magical. And in some cases it improves function, but in some cases it just makes it cooler. And so there's a little pizzazz there and people are interested in it. I have to tell you that generally speaking, though, the way I think about AI is as a tool, not a buddy. And I think part of what we're going to need to do as these models get more powerful, and this is where I do think government can help, is also just educating the public on what these models can do and what they can't do. These are really powerful extensions of yourself and tools, but also reflections of yourself, and so don't get confused and think that somehow what you're seeing in the mirror is some other consciousness. A lot of times this is just feeding back to you.
You just want Bing to flirt with you. This is what I felt personally very, very deeply.
Yeah.
All right, last question.
Yeah.
I need to know this. It's very
Yes.
important to me. What are the 4 apps in your iPhone dock?
4 apps at the bottom. We got Safari.
Key.
I've got my text. The green box.
You're a blue bubble. Do you get people any crap for being a green bubble?
No, I'm okay.
All right.
I've got my email, and I have my music. That's it.
That's like the stock set. Pretty good.
Yeah, if you asked the ones that I probably go to more than I should, I might have to put like words with friends on there, where I think I waste a lot of time, and maybe my NBA League Pass.
Oh, it's pretty good. It's pretty good.
But I try not to overdo it on
League
those.
Pass is just one click above the dock. That's what I'm getting out of this.
That's exactly.
President Obama, thank you so much for being on Decoder. I really appreciate this
I
conversation.
really enjoyed it, and I want to emphasize once again, because you've got an audience that understands this stuff, cares about it, is involved in it and working at it. If you are interested in helping to shape all these amazing questions that are going to be coming up, go to ai.gov and see if there are opportunities for you fresh out of school, or you might be an experienced tech coder who's done fine, bought the house, got everything set up, and says, what, I want to do something for the common good. Sign up. This is part of what we set up during my presidency, U.S. Digital Services, and it's remarkable how many really high-level folks decided that for 6 months, for a year, for 2 years, them devoting themselves to questions that are bigger than just what the latest app or video game was, turned out to be really important to them and meaningful to them, and attracting that kind of talent into this field with that perspective, I think is going to be vital.
Yeah, sounds like
All right, great to talk to you.
Thanks so much.
You bet.
Thank you very much.
Enjoyed it.
I appreciate that.
Come on, why don't we get a picture of
Yeah.
3, 2, 1 more. Good. Really enjoyed it. Good way. One thing real quick. Yes, of course.
Ayan, tapos na. Tapos na po si President Barack Obama sa kanyang Obama on Artificial Intelligence, free speech, and the future natin mga suki, no? Ayan. Okay, so at least makakuha kayo ng mga mga insight sa sinasabi niya mga suki, mga kababayan, no? Okay, kasi ang panahon ngayon ay iba na po nung mga unang panahon mga suki, no? Okay. Ang ibig sabihin po ay grabe na po ang technology ngayon, no? Okay, meron na itong tinatawag mga artificial intelligence, no? Okay, grabe po nagawa ng mga system ito mga suki, no? At least kahit hindi na tayo katulad sa kanila, at least lang tayo aware po sa mga bagong teknolohiya, no? Okay. Hindi ibig sabihin na habulin natin kasi hindi natin kaya, pero at least lang tayo aware po sa mga bagong innovation po, modernization po sa kasalukuyan, no? Ako matagal na po rito mga suki, no? 28 years. Wala pang Facebook. Okay, yung ginagamit natin ay yung mga Friendster pa. Okay, Yahoo Messenger. Nariyan na ako po mga suki, no? Okay, matagal na panahon po dito sa technology mga suki, no? Okay. Halos ata kalahati ang buhay ko rito sa technology na po mga suki, no? Okay, mga nagikinig sa atin. So, yan po. Okay, mag-break muna tayo. Meron pa bang pwede i-news? Anong oras na? Nako, wala na. 3 minutos na lang po mga suki. Okay. 26 minutos sa pasado alas 7 po, no? Okay, baka maka-news tayo kahit isang balita lang mga suki. Ayun, sandali lang. Okay, balikan natin, no?
Ang buhay sa isang pinong balita at ay tumatalakay sa naisupang kasalukuyan at nakapanahon. Makapolitika, makatingin, makakomentaryo at balita ang programa ito'y patas sa lahat. Walang kinikilingan, walang kinakampihan, at walang pinapamigan ang programa ito. Ang programa ito ay public service sa kahanginan at trabaho lamang.
Ayan. So, natawa ko dito sa mga... Okay, maghanap buhay lang tayo, no? Kasi hanap buhay natin ito. Okay, medyo... Okay, bubble po ang hanap buhay natin, no? Okay. Bubble. Sabi po ni Robert Kiyosaki, bubble po maghanap buhay rito, no? Okay. Hindi po araw-araw kumita ka, no? Okay. Kailangan lang matinik ka. Okay, market drops, press news awaited. Okay, basahin po natin ang itong pwede ka maghanap buhay dito mga suki, no? Okay, the peso and the stock market started the week on a down note, with investors said to be in wait and see mode ahead of the release of a press economic data, the outcome of a monetary policy meeting. Ayan po mga suki. Nakaantay ang mga ang mga investor mga suki, no? Yun ang inaantay nila. Okay, the currency weakened by 10 centavos to 56.06 against the greenback, while the benchmark Philippine Stock Exchange Index PSEI said 45.74 45.75 points or 0.74% to end Monday at a 6,116.14 level volume, no? Okay. So, tumaas-taas naman. Pero ang problema, red ata, hindi kumita. Ayan. Hindi green. Ayan po, no? Okay, continue natin ang balita. Okay, the broader or shares fell. Tama nga. Hulog. Okay, fell by 21.34 points or 0.64% to 3,295.52 level. Okay, local investor were in a wait-and-see mode as there will be many key events for this week, such as the release of the October U.S. inflation rate at the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas BSP meeting on Thursday, and the upcoming meeting between the U.S. President Joe Biden and the Chinese President Xi Jinping. The Pilstack Financial Incorporated Research Associate Claire RBR said. So yan po ang mga inantay po ng mga miron sa stock market, no? Okay, market participation was notably subdued with the net market value turnover only 1.29 billion. At least for this year, this was the lowest recorded net value. Turnover added. Upbeat corporate resort did a little to boost sentiment, RBR said, with the investor focusing instead of on news about foreign direct investment and Moody downgrade of its rating outlook for the United States of America. Okay, Rahina Capital Development Corporation Managing Director Luis Limlingan said the Philippine shares took a breather to start the week as the equities markets await the latest result from both the Morgan Stanley Capital Index rebalancing, the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas meeting, and the several speaking engagement from Fed official. So yan po mga latest balita, no? Okay, mag-wait and see ang mga tao, mga kababayan, no? Maghanap buhay dito. In particular, the key U.S. economic data releases this week the Consumer Price Index report, the retail sale report, and the PLI, Philadelphia Federation Manufacturing Index. Okay, he added. Back in the Philippines, beside the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas policy setting meeting on November 16, 2023, the September cash remittances will also be released on November 15, 2023, respectively. Okay, the peso open the day low of a 55.94 versus 1 greenback, and it traded as high as a 56.13 volume reached 1.184 billion pesos, higher than the 951 million recorded in the previous session. Ayan. Okay, so tumaas, no? Okay, Michael Ricaport, Chief Economist of the Rizal Commercial Banking Corporation, said the slight upward connection in the U.S. Dollar against the major global currencies among with the softer local loan growth had weighted on the peso. Ayan. Okay, the stock market or sector indices close in the red. Naku, ito malungkot mga kababayan. Close in the red. Okay, hindi po green. Okay, mining and oil posted the biggest loss of 1.4%. Ako, wala nang semirara ko mga suki mga kabayan. Na? Okay, volume was markedly thin as just over 285.3 million share worth with some 1.37 billion pesos having changed hands. Okay, the decline warns against the advances. Lugi, ang decline 106 to 57 ang kumita lang. Okay, while 52 remain unchanged, mga kababayan, no? Okay, so iyan po pinakamasakla. Okay, sa hanap buhay ito mga suki, mga kababayan, na. Okay, babawi na. Okay, babawi rin yan. Okay, sige po mga suki, no? Ayan. Okay, go seek Senator Goba, go seek mandatory evacuation center, no? Okay, paano mabasa ito mga suki? Wala nang oras. Okay, basahin ko na lang title. Okay, Senator go seek mandatory evacuation center. Okay, kahit may kli lang, basahin ko lang. Okay, Senator Christopher Bongo sought establishment of a mandatory evacuation center as co-sponsored and proposed Ligtas Pinoy Center Law. Okay, the Senator co-sponsored last November 7 Senate Bill SB 2451 to support its passage as it stressed the need for preparedness in the face of disaster. Okay, yan lang basahin ko muna kasi wala nang oras na. Okay, sobra-sobra na. Nagka-consume na ako ng 8 minutos po mga suki, mga kababayan. No? Okay? Sandali lang, ito na po. Tapos na. Ayan. Ayan. Okay, yan po mga suki, mga di na tayo makatouch doon, nakatouch doon sa bakbakan, no? Okay, pinalabas po ang Israeli government po sa pamagitan po pakita po ng tunnel po ng mga Hamas. Okay, ayon po sa balita nila, no? Because subject pa rin na yan ng verification, okay, ng mga independent body, mga independent investigator, no? Kasi alam mo, ang propaganda sa war, okay, ganun yan. Matindi po masukin, no? So, hayaan natin ang mga independent body, okay, mag-investigate po dyan sa problema nila, okay, sa Gaza Strip, mga kababayan, no? UN yan mga dapat mag-imbestiga, mga kababayan, no? Kaya yan. Ang hiniling natin kasi maraming civilian na nadamay, bata na damay, babae na damay, ceasefire. Yan ang hiling po ng buong daigdig, mga suki, no? Okay, yung mga katulad nating global citizen, global community, kasi gusto nating kapayapaan, no? Ayaw natin ng gulo. Okay. Kasi diyan sa gulo na yan, damay lahat, mga suki, no? Pati walang kinalaman, walang mga inosente, katulad natin maghanap buhay lang. Okay, damay tayo sa gulo yan, mga suki, no? Sana nga hindi na mag-escalate, no? De-escalate na yan at saka matigil, mga suki, no? Ayan. So, yun lang. Okay, paalam tayo, mga suki, mga kababayan, dito po sa programa natin sa umagang ito. ADLSNTV, in the heart of Filipinos. Okay, kasama po global citizen and a global community para sa lahat, mga suki, no? Okay, sa programa lang, halo-halo special opinion, balita, tiba pa. Okay, kasama po sa bisyo publiko, tinig ng mamamayan. And then, sumbungan ng mamamayan, mga suki, no? So, after this, maghanap buhay tayo. Okay, isang oras lang ako sa public life. Ang ibang oras ay ginamit natin na po pamaraan po ng kabuhayan. Okay? Mga ibadat natin. Isang oras lang ko sa microphone, no? Okay, sa hapon, isang oras din. So, maraming oras po gamitin natin sa pag-ibadat natin. Okay, basta huwag lang bitawan natin ng napakahalaga po ng microphone, mga suki, no? Okay. Kasi dito sa pagitan ng microphone, okay, matabla. Okay, matabla po lahat, mga suki, no? Maliban lang kung hindi ka na mag-news. Pero mag-news ka, tapos patas ang news mo, tabla lahat, mga suki, no? Walang lamangan. Ang kahalagaan po ng microphone nito, napakahalaga ang microphone, okay, para sa lahat, mga suki, no? Ang labanan dito, kung tama ang pag-news mo, ay tabla lang, mga suki, no? Huwag ka lang mag-manipulate ng news, magbalita na hindi totoo, magbalita ng peke, tabla lahat, mga suki, no? Hindi pwede malusutan nito, mga suki, ang microphone. Ganoon po kahalaga ng microphone, no? Okay, sa lipunan, sa buong daigdig, mga suki, ang microphone. Ang labas natin, kasi ang balita natin laging patas, tabla lahat, mga suki, no? Okay, hindi mo kalamang, okay, at least malaman po ng bayan ang mga sinasabi natin sa microphone, no? Katulad sinabi ni Barack Obama tungkol sa AI, Artificial Intelligence. So, nalaman natin, okay, dahil po ay sa kanya at saka itong mag-host, okay, itong The Birds sa Amerika, mga suki, no? Humawak ng microphone si Barack Obama, okay, para lang maintindihan po kung anong okay, artificial intelligence at saka mga executive order po pinipirmahan po ni President Joe Biden, no? Ayan. So, yan. Tabla, basta may microphone, okay, tapos ang news mo tama lang, ayan po, wala kang problema, no? Yon po bakit natin hindi pa, matanda na ako, 66, hindi ko binitawan ng microphone, no? Para magkatabla lang. Okay, sa lahat ng gawain natin. Okay, hindi po bias magbalita mga suki, no? Hindi po mag-manipulate ng balita. Balitang balita lang ng totoo mga suki, no? Ayan. So tablang labas. Ayan. Ayan po mga suki, mga kababayan, paalam na ko. Okay, dito sa programa, in-sponsor po ng Mind of Global Food Lines, MGF Corporation, at saka itong ADLSNTV Corporation, no? Okay, sila po mag-provide lahat mo ng gastusin. Okay, dito po sa programa natin, 1 oras sa umaga, minsan lampas, at saka 1 oras sa gabi, no? Ayan. So, paalam tayo, wala tayong masamang tinapay sa lahat. Okay, balitang patas. This has been Abs Damahan lamang po, no? Babay na. Kaya kung maintindihan nyo ang communication, yan po ng kahalagaan ng communication, no? Okay, dapat intindihin nyo kung anong ibig sabihin ng communication. Ayan.
Ang Buhol Station Piling Balita at ay tumatalakay sa naisupang kasalukuyan at nakapanahon. Makapolitika, makatinong, makakomentaryo at balita ang programa ito'y patas sa lahat. Walang kinikilingan, walang pinakampilan, at walang pinapamigan ang programa ito. Ang programa ito ay public service sa kakaminan at trabaho lamang.
Okay, tanungin ko kayo, sino hindi takot sa balita? Magsabi kayo kung sino hindi takot sa balita, mga suki, no? Sa news, takot lahat po sa, okay, sa balita. Mapa-paper, microphone broadcast, takot po lahat ng tao, mga suki, no? Takot sa mga tinatago nila. Ayan. Yon po, kaya nga hindi natin binitawan itong microphone. Ayan. Takot lahat yan. Lalo na katulad magbabalita, takot. Ayan.